for founders to really be successful and to really build with thought and build something which will last a long time, my view is that founders should take the time, get to a decision what they want to build, begin building it, really get down the line of understanding, really have it well documented of what they want to build, how they want to build it.
Avi Eyal, thank you for joining me on 20 Minute Leaders. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am honored to have you here. Such a pleasure. Avi, I can't wait to talk to you about your journey all the way from South Africa with startups all the way to venture capital. I'm blown away even just saying this. Entree Capital with over 90 portfolio companies, 23 exits you told me, but that's putting aside the 8 fantastic ventures that you've either exited or been successful with yourself. Avi, what gives? How do you even go to having such an incredible trajectory? I have to get into the mindset of what you went through in your life. It's just incredible.
So as a background, and it's not such a great trajectory. I think many people have had much greater, but I was born in Israel to a very average Israeli family. My father was a colonel in the Air Force. I used to see him once a week. And at some stage, my mother had had enough of it. And at the age of 6, my father took up a role as an engineer in South Africa and moved us to South Africa. And I grew up in South Africa. In grade 1, I met what became a great friend and also business partner of mine, Martin. And I did my schooling in South Africa, studied engineering at the University of Natal, studied computer engineering and software engineering, electrical engineering. And to put myself through university, I really didn't know what I was doing. So I started a company writing software for people. It was the age of ARPANET and Ethernet starting up, and people were writing databases in DBase and Clipper Sum 87. And I started writing software for companies, and someone asked me, what do you need to give me an invoice? What are you going to call this company of yours? So I didn't have anything better to do. In an age of 18, I called it Great Programming Solutions, GPS. And that's how the company started, became known as High Technologies. By the time I finished university, we had 50 or 60 employees. 2 years later, we merged it into an IPO in South Africa and then in London. And really from not knowing any better, we had a fairly good success in this business. I eventually left the business and had another 2 startups that I wanted to try out. One we sold to Walmart subsidiary in South Africa, and the second became a pretty big property business, which I ended up being a shareholder of for 15 years. But what I realized was that I needed to leave South Africa if I wanted to make it big. Like they say, actors go to Hollywood to try and make it big. Well, entrepreneurs want to make it big, go to the US. Seems that a couple of other people were doing the same kind of thing, probably much more successful than me, Elon Musk, Roelof Botha at Sequoia. It seems like they had the same idea. So I landed in the US, and I was fortunate enough to, over the next 6 years, be involved in a number of startups, which were sold eventually to 2 public companies, one to a private equity business, and one I sold back to management, where I learned a valuable lesson that if things don't things don't look right and don't feel right, and it's much better to exit gracefully, get your money back, and move on. And then from there, I went through a couple of phases. Went back to South Africa, got married, started one more startup, exited it to a public company in India, and my partner Martin and I, who were involved in the startup as well, decided that we'd start investing in companies. We had reached the ripe old age of 40, and everyone was younger, brighter, faster, stronger. So we thought that we have a bit of experience, and if we can leverage our founder experience to other industries or other startups, we could leverage that. And that was the birth of Entree Capital.
Wow, Avi, I have to focus a little bit about this incredible entrepreneurial experience. Walk me through some of the key similarities between the different ventures that you formed. I think one of the most fascinating things that I'm gaining from hearing these incredible stories is really piecing together some insights when you look back. So if you look back, for example, at the first venture that you had during college, what are some key either mistakes or incredible insights that you've gained looking back at it that you took with you throughout the rest of your journey?
Sure. Which mistakes didn't I make? I kind of think that we were lucky and successful despite everything we did.
I love it.
The one thing is we got involved. I always started in businesses that were moonshots or at the forefront of what they were doing. So we kind of picked the trend of applications, databases on PCs, moved to Windows from the old Novell environment, where networking became far more accessible and easier to manage. So we leveraged those things, and that was kind of a trend that followed on when my second venture in South Africa was ICOM, which basically took EDI, which was really old, and and really wrapped it in XML and created XML schemas. This is in 1995 or so.
Wow.
Again, it was at the forefront of what was happening in those days, and sending those messages across pharmaceutical companies and big distributors over the internet. To in the States, where we had a business. One of the businesses was called Maestro Commerce, where it was really Shopify in 1999. But you'll appreciate that there wasn't the ability to build things at scale in the cloud in that first Internet 1.0 iteration. But having said that, we did very well with it. To Ultra DNS, which I was involved in a company that was taking DNS and putting it in a software stack for the first time and taking it off routers, Cisco routers and things like that. Fast forward 15 years later, I backed a business called NS1 out of New York, which is kind of the new generation of DNS, and NS1 today is probably the leading company around the world for application load balancing, content distribution, DNS, secure DNS, things like that. And kind of so a lot of the things repeat on themselves in new guises. Mistakes we made then, kind of not understanding how to hire the right people, and not understanding how to scale business, being very much probably a fair amount of arrogance and kind of building things around yourself rather than building things around teams and releasing. Typical mistakes that people make when they don't have the benefit of expertise and an ecosystem to use. And that was one of the biggest valuable lessons I learned moving to the States, in that in South Africa, you were working as an island. there wasn't an ecosystem to teach you how to build great tech companies. And that's the one thing that you have to give to Israel, to London now, to Boston, New York, San Francisco. These places have developed unbelievable ecosystems and certainly in the second iteration post 2008 of information sharing and founders helping each other, and
Right.
just the plethora of information that's out there, whether it's blog posts, 20-minute leadership podcasts, etc., for people to share information and not be and not worry about sharing the information in a way that it lifts up the entire industry and makes everyone successful.
100%, Avi. So obviously now, aside from the 8 ventures that you've had, which are incredible, you've now also invested in over 90 portfolio companies. You've seen, over a quarter of them exit already. I have to gauge now, for young entrepreneurs, as a young entrepreneur myself, and for other young entrepreneurs starting on their journey, what are some of the, you mentioned about the power of the ecosystem and power of the expertise. So here is an opportunity for me to talk to one of the world experts on startup formation and venture scaling. What are some key things that I should keep in mind as I go about my venture, or my friends should keep in mind as they go about theirs, from the early days all the way to hiring properly and scaling it a little bit? I know it's an incredible amount to cover, but the key nuggets or the key things that you see keep repeating themselves.
Yeah, so I'm no expert. There's I offer advice, and sometimes the advice is right. But I keep telling people that future performance, past performance is no indicator of future returns. I think that too many founders have, especially in this last year or two, too many founders leverage their own brand to go out and raise incredible amounts of money because it's easy. And my thought on it is that for founders to really be successful and to really build with thought and build something which will last a long time, my view is that founders should take the time, get to a decision what they want to build, begin building it, really get down the line of understanding, really have it well documented of what they want to build, how they want to build it, make decisions on how they're going to scale, what those things are going to look like before they raise copious amounts of money. I think they should,
right.
If they raise their pre-seed or their seed round, they should take time. They should make sure they have it right, because if you do things right, and if you get to this breakout situation or moonshot trajectory, you don't have time to go back and do things all over. You don't have time to go back and correct the sins of the past. So, my recommendation is not to be so influenced by, I can now, raise the seed round. 6 months later, I can raise the A and, at triple the valuation or quadruple the valuation. And someone wants to give me 20 million now. Let's quickly take it. I think there has to be a bit of thought put into it. Just because money is there, money is not the objective. The objective is, how do you build a big company, a successful venture that is meaningful to you and to your stakeholders. And many times funding is someone else's solution. It's not the company's best interest. So my view is to take it slow, repeat, build the flywheel, test, retest, and then grow. And I think it's a hard thing to hold yourself back in this market where money is so cheap. But I think long term you're best served if you do that.
I think that one of the things that you're touching upon, which I've been very curious about myself and I've been hearing a lot here, is this idea of intentionality. not just being intentional about, your team and your product, but also being intentional about the growth of your company, and having some sort of coherent rationality behind the decisions you make. And like you're mentioning, I'm seeing an environment in which, there's a lot of interest from investors. There's a lot of interest from advisors and from people to want to be part of different journeys, especially in communities like, let's say, 8200 or Stanford, but so many other communities as well. And what I'm watching also is almost like you mentioned, a lack of intentionality and a fight for raising the most amount of capital or for the biggest names and the biggest brands, but without thinking perhaps too critically about how is this going to help me reach my next milestone of making that moonshot impact or some meaningful impact along the way. And so I'm definitely taking that to heart. But Avi, I have to ask perhaps one of the most difficult questions. You've done so much. You've had 8 incredible ventures. You have 90 portfolio companies with 23 exits. You've run Sigma Labs. You're on the board member of Monday.com from the beginning and so many other companies. Why work more? Why do you get up still every day and work so much to continue finding more amazing companies and spend more time? You've done it all. Like, seriously.
So I would beg to differ. My passion is growing businesses, growing founders, and I live and breathe that. I think a lot more people have done far better. It's not a race, not a comparison, but if someone built 9 businesses themselves, if you had to compare an Elon Musk, he's done 2 or 3 businesses. He's got SpaceX, he's got Tesla, he's got a few other things. But just between those 2 things, he's done so much more than I could ever hope to do. But I suppose in my own way, I love founders. I love building. I enjoy the challenge. I need to be challenged every day, and for me, it's a combination of. I keep telling my founders ABC, always be closing. The challenge that you could be missing out on something. Maybe it's maybe a bit of avariciousness, but it's kind of the need to learn every day. I'm insatiably thirsty for information and data, and I love learning, and so also, to be fair, it's not that I've built 90 or the founders have built 90 businesses. I have partners and employees who work with me, and the partnership has built 90 successes. I may be the front face of the partnership, but everyone in our business works really hard and really does extraordinarily well. And maybe I think the success has been that insatiability or that appetite to build and not to miss out and to help and to grow, I think has maybe rubbed off on the 3 or 4 key people in our business that write the checks.
Right. Well, I have to say that even beyond the incredible trajectory, I'm even more inspired by the humbleness that you portray here. And obviously, there are phenomenal people that are working on a lot of these endeavors. But at the end of the day, you mentioned that you didn't create those 90 companies yourself, but finding those 90 companies and finding the right founders and having that joint partnership and providing value that both sides are happy. I think that's inspiring for me to see. I see so many partnerships of friends, either from the venture capital world or founding partners or advisors that provide less value than anyone expected, or even have deteriorating effect. And I think that finding the right partners, to me, it seems like growing is the biggest part here in creating that venture. And I think that anybody who's been working with you is incredibly lucky. But Avi, a little bit about finding the right founders, both founders and perhaps co-founders. So you've seen now, over 100 companies that you've personally been involved with, thousands more that you've observed. what are some interesting insights as to finding either backing the right founders or for a founder finding the right partners to go on the journey with?
So, finding the right partners for us has been a really challenging thing to do. I think that we come from a background where all of our partners are quite technical. They have very well-formed ideas of what they believe in. I would say about my partners that they all have the highest morals and ethics, and to become a partner, we have to work with someone for a long time, and we have to know them for a long time, and it's kind of that's always a challenge to get to the right place. From a founders and company perspective, we kind of created a formula of how we look at businesses and how we look at founders. From a business perspective, we call it the 4 T's, where we created a formula which is timing, tech, TAM, and team. So the founders individually are important, but a founder is no good if they can't work in a team.
Right.
And so when I look to you as a founder, I equally look at your co-founders, and my test is if the founders together can work in a team.
Right.
We don't like compromising on people with that may not have absolute integrity or ethics or things like that. I think all too often people overlook certain challenges that founders have because they make it up by the idea is great or something else. But my view is that you want to be partners with the people you go into business with, and for us, we kind of tell our founders that we are founders alongside them. We're entrepreneurs, which is very different. And because we've grown up as entrepreneurs, we can't see any of our businesses in any other way than from an entrepreneur's eyes. And so we want to be an entrepreneur with you rather than a financial investor in you. Yes, we give you money, and yes, we expect a great return. But we want to be on the journey with you. And so we find that kind of that alignment works out very well. And I think we've become very quick at identifying if you are not that. And so we can say no quite quickly, but we also get to yes very quickly.
I love that. I just love Avi. I have to thank you for being so generous with your time. Obviously, I know how incredibly busy you are, and it's phenomenal having you here. Thank you for the inspiration and for the insights, and for making a positive impact. I just looking at the different companies that either you built or that you've helped become a founding partner, as you're saying it. I think it's just remarkable, and just that impact on the world and that insatiable curiosity that you talk about is something that I identify with very closely, both with my family, but also with myself. And I think that I'm getting the most inspiration out of those 2 words from this conversation. But before we leave, I have to ask you the most important and the difficult question, which is 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Is this in terms of business or in terms of personal?
I'm gonna let you decide that. Let's say if I ask one of your partners or one of the founders that you've backed, who is Avi Eyal? What are some words that they would say about you?
Okay, then I think they would tell you thoughtful, integrity, and loyalty.
I love that, and we forgot also the 2 most important words: insatiable, curious. But I think that I'm gonna start adopting that. I'm just gonna start adopting that myself. Avi, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much, and I look forward to keeping in touch. And it's just incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the show.